All right, Kuf Aleph Amud Bey is 101b. B, right in the middle of the page. The line starts with Malachim, or back up, line starts with V'chulu, and the last word in the line is Shleisha.
Where is that?
Right in the middle of the page. The first word of the line is V'chulu. It's in the narrow set of lines, and the last set of the word is Shleisha. So there's a colon, and there's the word Shleisha, and then it goes on, and there's a colon again. You have it?
Yeah.
Last word on the line is Shleisha. So the Gemara backs to the Mishnah, which said that Shleisha Malachim, there are 3 kings, V'arba Yotis, and 4 commoners, etc., who forfeited their share in the world to come. The Gemara is beginning with the first of these 3 kings, which is Yeravam. Yeravam is one who, he's the first one to break away from the kingdom of David, which is inherited by King Solomon, of course, Beshlema. And during that time, Yeravam broke away and created the northern kingdom of Israel.
He's a direct son of Solomon?
No, not a son of Solomon. He was, I think he was a son of an advisor.
Yeah, it's the son of, I think it's the Shevet from Shevet Yosef, by the Menashe Ephraim.
Yeah, I think he was. His family was in the advisory to King David.
That's right.
That's right, but he wasn't the line of David because he became different Shevet.
No, he wasn't in line with it. No, but his father was in the. He was part of the royalty, part of the court, the king's court. His family was advisors, not loyalty.
Yes, exactly. That's
Sorry?
Yosef's family.
Sure, Yosef's family.
Yes, but not. He wasn't himself royal blood.
Yeah, no, of course it could be because it's the tribe of Menashe Ephraim.
But he broke away to make the kingdom of Israel the north, and the Gemara is going to talk about that a little bit. Excuse me.
Yeah. But the main thing was his Chodfi and Marcus of Rabbi.
Yeah, so let's see.
That's what the Gemara says.
The Gemara is going to elaborate on all that. So Tanna Rabbanan, our sages taught, Yeravam. Why is he called Yeravam? Why is his name Yeravam? 3 interpretations, which as we'll see, in some way are all one. Okay, number 1, Sheriva he debased the nation. Because not only did he himself worship idols, but swayed the people and the millions to do so as well. As we'll learn later, understanding that the spiritual center of service of God, the temple, in King Solomon's territory would undermine his leadership. So he had to create his own centers of worship in the north. And thus he created, we'll see soon, houses of idol worship. And thus he debased the people. Davar Acher.
Sure we are. I don't know more so
Davar Acher, another reason for why his name was Yeravam. One is Yeriva because he debased the people. The word Yeravam coming from Riva Another one is Yeravam Sh'asam Riva Ba'am. He created strife amongst the people. He split the north and the south.
And even amongst his own people, because some supported idolatry and some didn't.
Davar Acher, another reason why it's called Yeravam. Yeravam Sh'asam Riva ben Yisrael v'Mishba Shamayim. He created strife between Israel and their God. So it debased the people, separated Jew from Jew, and separated Jew from God. And of course, we might say that they're all 3 one and the same. And if you've heard it a number of times, the Rebbe famously said this when he first became Rebbe, that there are 3 loves that are intertwined: love of Torah, love of Jew, and love of God. There's not one without the other. And this is all 3 in the reverse. Debased the people, that's anti-Torah. Separated Jew from Jew, that's the antithesis of love of a fellow Jew. And disconnected God from the people, the opposite of love of God. So the 3 loves that a Jew has that are intertwined one with the other, he undid all 3 of them, and thus really they're all really connected in some way. Okay. That's right, Ben Navat. His father was Navat.
Yeah, that's actually
Zerua.
It's right in the Gemara.
Yeah, Ben Navat. His mother is what?
Zerua. I don't know how.
Zerua.
Zerua, I don't know.
Yeah. So Ben Navat, he's called Yeravam. So we just explained why it's called Yeravam.
Zerida.
Sorry?
Zerida, maybe.
How's it written?
He's a member of the tribe of Ramah.
He's a Reda.
His mother named Zeruah, leprous, was a widow.
Oh, it's Zerua
It's a rule.
Yeah.
from Malachim. Okay.
2 sons of Abijah and Nadav seated him on the throne.
Yeah. Okay. So Ben Navat, why is the father called Navat? Says the Gemara, because Ben Shenibat, he was a person who saw, who assessed. Nibat means mabit, means to look to it. It doesn't just mean to look at something, but it means to really analyze something. But V'lo didn't see, so he analyzed, but misanalyzed, misunderstood, misrepresented. The Gemara is going to explain what that misrepresentation was. Okay, so Tana, you learned on this subject of Navat, coming from the root word of mabit, to look, to gaze, to analyze. Says the Gemara, Hu Navat, Hu Micha, Hu Sheva ben Bichri. Navat is Micha, who is Sheva ben Bichri. Some say this means literally that, the two characters we know are Navat and Micha. Navat is the father of Yeravam, as we just described, and Micha, of course, is the famous protagonist who miraculously survived the fall of some of the storage houses in Pisim and Ramses, ended up coming out of Egypt with the Jewish people, and was a cause of strife, like from the Eid of Rav. Caused Jews to, a lot of the trouble the Jews went through in the desert were caused by Micha, this character who came out, Pesel Micha, the famous. He came out with with some idol worship from Egypt.
Abraham saved them from the wall.
Yeah, Moshe.
Saved them from the wall.
So, whether this means literally that Navat is Micha, which means he would live quite a long time.
The little boy that was saved from the stone.
That's right. And whether this means that Micha himself was actually Navat, or, as others understand it, that they're kind of like their personalities are one. Their neshamas are connected. They're a Gilgul of each other,
You
perhaps.
can use Gilgal, or you can just say it's simply an ancestor.
Yeah, they share a common theme or a common character.
A certain kind of mission.
Prototype.
Seemed like
And then the actual name is Sheva ben
Lavan
Bichri.
and Bilam are the same person. Is that possible?
Yeah.
One Gilgal with 35
Or
years.
Pinchas Elio, other such examples like that.
So here we're remiss to Gilgal.
Yeah.
Or it can simply character.
So Sheva ben Bichri, and the name was Sheva ben Bichri. So why the other names then? Why Niva and Micha? Says the Gemara, Navat, the word Navat, as we just said, comes from Shenibet, comes from the root word of Mabit, to look, to gaze, to analyze. V'lo and didn't see, misunderstood. And Micha is called Mishcha, Shenes Machmech Bebinyan. The word Micha comes from Mach, or Machmech, to be crushed in a building, in the storage houses of Pisim and Ramses, as I mentioned, and were saved miraculously. What's the actual name? Sheva ben Bichri Shmoi. The actual name is Sheva ben Bichri. Okay. Now, what did Navat look at? What did he analyze that he misunderstood? So says the Gemara, Tan Rabban, our sages taught. Shleisha, there were 3 people. Nibtu, which saw something, and they got a message about something that's going to happen, but V'lo, they didn't see it correctly. They misinterpreted the vision. The Elohein, and they are as follows. Navat, this person Navat, Yaravam's father, Achisophel. Achisophel, of course, is the advisor of King David, who later supported Avshalom. Avshalom is David's son, who rebelled against David himself. And Achisophel was the main support for Avshalom's claim to the throne. Advisor and warrior. So Navat saw something and misunderstood. Achisophel saw something and misunderstood. The Tzdigene Pare and the astrologers, thank you, of Pare, they saw a vision and they misunderstood. So let's see, one at a time. Navat, Yeravam's father, who kept on saying is called Navat because he saw and misunderstood. So what did he see? Ra Eish, he saw a fire. Sheyitzas Ma'amasa, he saw a fire, a vision of a fire emerging from his organ, his reproduction organ. It's a vision. He saw a vision of fire emerging from his organ of reproduction, and therefore Husavar, he assumed Iyu Malach. He thought it meant that he's going to be king. But V'lo, he misunderstood, because not he's going to become king, but Yeravam Udinafik Minei. his son Yeravam, was going to emerge from him. That's why he came from that organ, because he reproduced from him. Who came from him, he became king. Illegitimate king, but a king nonetheless. So the vision was some sense of rulership emerging from him, and he thought of his own rulership, but really it was his son's rulership.
That's why Shem Mebrichi rebelled against David, because he wanted to become king.
That's right. That's why Shem Mebrichi, who is Navat, rebelled.
Yeah, but it was not him, it was his son.
Same thing with Achisophel. So Achisophel, again, this advisor to King David, who joined forces with King David's son Avshalom in the rebellion, Ra Tzaras, he saw a leprosy. He says, Zarcha lo ya'lam asay, which glowed from his organ of reproduction. So a similar thing. Husavar, he thought he sees something glowing, so he figures it's some kind of royalty. So Husavar Iyu Malach, he figured he's going to become king. So he figured, okay, now I want to back off Shalom, I'll bring him to the throne, and then I'll take over. And that way, my prophecy will come true, I'm going to rule. But Veloyis, incorrect. It was his children who would rule. Who's that? Basheva Bitoy. Basheva, his granddaughter, actually.
But no, Besheva is his daughter, and
Sorry,
Mom would be his grandson.
sorry. Basheva with the Nafik Minei. It was Basheva Bitoy. Basheva was his daughter. The Nafik Minei, from whom emerged King Solomon. So it was his grandson, that came through King David. That came through Basheva. Basheva, of course, is the woman who King David fell in love with, and he sent her husband, to battle so that he can marry her, which he did. Her son became king, and King David, and to some degree, half of Tehillim is written as a ode to King David trying to do teshuvah for that misdeed.
Actually, I can bring to Besheva was like the granddaughter of Achitophel. Let's come more in Sanhedrin.
We're in Sanhedrin.
69b, close over here.
Earlier.
That was the granddaughter of Achitophel.
Okay?
Yeah.
Either way, it's his descendant, not him.
Exactly.
Okay, so that was Navat, the father of Yeravam, who thought he was going to rule and he was his son. Achisophel, who thought he was going to rule, really was his grandson. And each of those, Achisophel and Navat, whose name was Shev ben Bichri, both tried to rebel against King David, trying to fulfill their own prophecy. And then finally, the third group of people who saw a vision and misunderstood. And they are Tzdigene Parai, the astrologers of Parai. What was the mistake? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Chaim bar Chanina says, what's the meaning of the verse? This comes in Bamidbar, so it's way later. But the pasuk is describing the people of Egypt from years earlier. And the pasuk says, Hema me meriva. They are the waters of strife.
That's when Moshe was punished for not going to this.
Let's see.
Yeah. Or the Hema, these are waters.
The Hema, they, as if like there's some people.
Before.
So who are the people that were in the past? Waters of strife. So explains Rabbi Chaim bar Chanina. Hema, they, Shiro and Tzdigene Parai, because the astrologers of Parai saw a vision, V'to, and they made a mistake. What was the vision they saw? Ra'u, they saw, Shemeshin, Ser Yisrael, that the Redeemer of Israel, the Mayim Huloika, will be struck by water. So they saw a vision, right? The verse describes that they came to Parai and said, there was a male born who was going to lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. Get rid of all the boys. So how should we get rid of the boys? So they figured the best way to get rid of the boys is by putting them into the water, drowning them. Why? Because they saw that the leader of Israel is going to be struck by water. Okay, so take this future leader and put him in water. So therefore, Amr, they said, Kalaben, any child born, and Kalaben Hayolud, any son that's born, Hayari Tashtichu, into the river you shall cast him. But Vehein Layadu, they made a mistake. They didn't realize, Shall Iskim Imrivalaika. He's going to be struck, yes, but not struck by the waters of the Nile, but struck by the mistake he made with water. In that, he hit the rock to make the water emerge, rather than speak to the rock. And that was his strike. He got struck by that, he was punished, and they didn't enter the land of Eretz Yisrael as a result. So they saw a vision, but they didn't see the whole thing. Okay, so this kind of concludes this little section of the Gemara. Now the Gemara returns to the original subject, which is the fact that the Mishnah stated that Yeravam forfeits his share in the world to come. And how do we know that? So how do we know that Yeravam is not going to come to the world to come? Says the Gemara, because the pasuk says, And it was a result of this thing, L'chatas beis Yeravam, because of the sins of the house of Yeravam, Ulahakid, Ulahashmid, they should be destroyed and uprooted, Me'al Pnei Adama, from on the face of the earth. So it's double expression, uprooted and destroyed. So it says the Gemara, in commenting, Lahachid, to be destroyed, but Lamhaz in this world, Lahashmid, and to be uprooted, or to be erased. Lamhaba for the world to come. The double expression say both in this world and the world to come, and thus the Gemara deduces from this extra term in the verse that the destruction is not just merely in the physical world, but also in the world to come.
It's in Kings?
Sorry?
This verse in Kings.
This is in Kings 1, 13, 34. Now the question becomes, if he was so debased, why would he ever become king? That in of itself is a great reward. So what did he do right? And here we have a very beautiful lesson. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, why would Yeravam be granted kingship if he's such a terrible person? Says the Gemara, because he rebuked King Solomon. The Gemara is going to explain in a moment what it is. But King Solomon is a very elusive figure, especially in the way the Gemara comments on about him, some of which we'll learn now. In that, he was clearly a very brilliant political strategist, and the Gemara insinuates that sometimes that in his strategy, that sometimes he certainly straddled the line of what can and cannot be done, and whether we don't have to assume that he was wrong, but we can certainly understand that people misunderstood him, that's for sure. Even if he did everything correct, it's certainly the optics weren't perfect all the time. Marrying certain people and all kinds of strategies he had. And therefore, even though Bashlema, we say Karmasir Bashli Musa, the temple was in its glory and there was lots of peace, so he had major, huge accomplishments, and it was also obviously not without divine grace, and he had peace, which in and of itself is an amazing thing, which is one of the reasons why he gets most praise, because Shlema is called out, his name is Shlema, because he had peace. But nonetheless, some of his tactics certainly had the optics of straddling the line, if you will, as we'll see soon. So it says the Gemara that Yeravam was rewarded with kingship because he rebuked King Solomon, because King Solomon did something again on this border, on this line, and the only person with the gall, with the nerve, with the strength, if you will, maybe even, to rebuke King Solomon was Yeravam. Now Yeravam and King Solomon, as we just finished saying, knew each other for a long time. Yeravam was part of the court, right? His family were advisors to King David, so it's safe to assume that they had a relationship growing up as well. But nonetheless, rebuking a king is not an easy thing to do. And the fact that he did it, he's rewarded for king. So the question becomes, so what went wrong? He rebuked the king, good thing. What went wrong? Why was he punished? Because he rebuked him publicly. This is an amazing, amazing thing.
To humiliate someone publicly is to kill someone because
But I was right.
White face.
But I was right. Doesn't matter if you were right.
That's right.
Even if you're right. Even if you're right. Never ever rebuke someone in public. And what happens is, it's not just like, okay, if you rebuke someone in public, you did it 50%. Because you rebuked them at least. The other half doing it in private, they didn't do right. No. If you rebuke someone in public, what you're indicating is that it's not about fixing the other person's ways, but it's about proving you yourself right, which means even your rebuke is under question. And I was saying the whole story, but I remember one time, and I learned this lesson very deeply. My grandfather wanted to tell me off for something, whatever it was. I once shared the story, but it's a long story, doesn't matter. But it was myself, my wife, within 3 months of marriage, my grandmother and my grandfather in the house. My grandfather called me out of the kitchen. We were all four sitting, took me to his office, and then he told me what he wanted to say. And he told me before, he's like, I don't want to tell this in front of the ladies. And like, it's not like he's going to yell at me in front of the whole show. It's my wife and my grandmother. I told my wife later what happened anyway, right? And I'm sure my grandfather told his wife what he said also, right? So everybody knew what happened. But I didn't want to have that conversation, even in front of my own wife, in front of my own grandmother. It taught me something,
Ability of heart.
Yeah, you need to tell somebody something, and you have to. And as a grandfather, it's his right to teach me the important lesson I need to learn. But I learned also from the fact that he did it to me privately. So the Gemara is saying here, so Yeravim rebuked King Solomon correctly, but doing so public was enough to lead him down a terrible path. So what's the rebuke? Says the Gemara. Shneimar verse reads, also in Kings, V'zeh hadavar, and this is the thing. Asher heyim yad b'melech Shlomo, which Yeravam raised his hand against the King Solomon, King Shlomo. So this was the matter that he took up against Shlomo, which was Bonas Amoloi, who built the Milo, some place. Soger as Peretz Ir David. He closed off the breaches, the breaks in the walls of the city of David, his father. So what's wrong? He closed the walls of King David, so it seems like he protected, fortified the city. What's wrong? So explains the Gemara. Amar Loi, Yeravam told King Shlomo in rebuke, David Avicha, your father, King David, Paretz Pirtzis B'chayma. He broke the walls, made openings in the walls. It compromised its fortification, perhaps, but it had a certain value, and that value was worth it. Namely, Yidei Yisrael Regel, so that Jews should be able to ascend and come to Yerushalayim for the holidays, even though the Beis Mikdash wasn't there yet. But we'll leave that aside for now. But he allowed people to come in and out, come celebrate the holidays in Yerushalayim, and therefore he specifically had openings in the wall. Va'ata, and you, Gadarta, you close these gates, you close these entrances, and for what purpose? It might seem like it's for fortification. No, not really. But rather, Kedelasis and Geri Labas Pare, so that your wife, the daughter of Pare, can have slave labor.
Yeah?
Slave labor.
Oh no.
She can have people work for her. So again, this is like King Solomon straddled on the line, because he married the daughter of Pharaoh, which is itself controversial, but it was largely part of the peace effort. Was this treaty he made with Egypt by marrying a daughter who converted, and later had her own issues. But at any rate, this is where Yeravam rebukes King Shlomo, and even though the rebuke was well-founded, nonetheless, because it was public, he was punished for that. The Gemara concludes commentary like this: and what does this mean? That he raised his hand up in front of the king? So I translated it before. That means that this is the issue he took up. That's not a literal translation. Hedem Yad literally means raised up his hand, although it's an expressionism to say this is the issue he took up, which is how I translated it. But if you take it literally, there's some movement of the hand. The Gemara asks, what is it? What's this literal interpretation of, literal/homiletic explanation of what it means that he took up, that he raised his hand? Says the Gemara, Amr Rav Nachman explains, Shecholat tefillah b'fanav. He took off his tefillin in his presence. In the presence of a king, one doesn't take off one's tefillin. One sits properly, waits till the king leaves the room, and then gets to taking off a tefillin. Because taking off a tefillin is kind of being busy with yourself. Take it off, you're wrapping, you're putting it away, and that's not something you do in the presence of the king. In fact, one doesn't do it in the presence of a Torah either. When the Torah is out, it's the halacha. When the Torah is out, one doesn't take off a tefillin.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll notice some people, when they take off a tefillin, the Torah is out, they'll step outside the room to take off a tefillin. It's kind of the same thing. When you're in front of the Torah, when you're in front of a king, you sit and do nothing other than observe the king and the Torah. But one doesn't, do casual activity, one of which would be taking off a tefillin. And this is what Yeravam did. Raised his hand, quite literally, raised his hand to take off a tefillin in the presence of King Shlomo, showing, I'm disregarding the respect that I should be showing him.
But when did he do that? Right after he rebuked him?
It seems in the same occasion, because they're both in the same verse. That's what it seems like. Okay, so we'll stop over here, and tomorrow we'll get into what was really going on when Yeravam decided to build these houses of idol worship in an effort to split the people between the northern and southern kingdoms. Okay. Have a wonderful day, everybody.